There we go. You will get the,
Got
this
it.
is this is your chance to leave now. Uh, if you do not want to be part of the live stream. Somebody had to have sued YouTube because they are so adamant now about making sure that everybody knows. One moment. I'm not speaking because it is. Okay, I'm not speaking because it is playing. It is playing me on YouTube in my ear. So, so okay, now I've rectified that. I'm not listening to that anymore. Um, and who wants to listen to themselves on tape?
Oh,
Um, all right, so let's get started. Welcome, 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 everybody. I am Gina Rozier. I am the founder of Fixer Sisters. So glad you're here to hear from Monica Mense tonight. She's the master gardener, and I'll introduce her a little bit more in a moment. Let me just tell you a little bit about Fixer Sisters and how Fixer Sisters got started. I am a home improvement DIY fanatic. I love it, and um, I decided that I was going to lamp, lay down laminate flooring on my whole first floor because it takes a weekend on HGTV. So how hard could it be? So about 3 to 4 months into the process of measuring, dragging the piece of laminate over to the saw, cutting it, laying it down, doing the next one after another. I thought, I hate this. Why? I love home improvement DIY, and I'm hating this right now. Why am I hating this? And I realized it was because it was repetitive, it was lonely, it was in some instances hard to do by myself. And I thought, what I need, and I had a house full of people too. That was the other thing. I had a house full of people living with me, none of whom enjoy home improvement DIY. So I thought, what I need is somebody like me. I need somebody who loves home improvement as much as I do and will come over and help me with my stuff when I need it. And I'll go help her with her stuff when she needs it. So I thought, I will go on social media and find this because I know that all things exist on social media. Well, turns out it didn't. Every once in a while, I would see some poor woman like me say, "Can somebody come help me with so and so?" And somebody would be like, "Okay, well, I'll send my son's girlfriend over or whatever." And I thought, what if that was a wholly inappropriate person who didn't know what they were doing or wasn't helpful or didn't show up? And I thought, well, I'll start a meetup group. So I know some of you are here from the meetup group, and I the meetup group has grown. We're up to about 165 people in the meetup group, and it's great. That's my cat who also enjoys the meetup group clearly. Um, but it is not very private. If you have someone who offers to help, you can't say, actually I'd like somebody with more experience or somebody with less experience without being very public about it. So I created a website where we can do exactly that. You can post what I call it's Fixer Sisters. So you can post a fix on the calendar and say, I want to paint my house next weekend or paint my bedroom next weekend. And then people can offer to help you. And in the privacy of your own home, you can look at their profiles and see who they are. Maybe you need somebody who really knows what they're doing, and maybe you just need somebody to hold the tools. And then you pick someone, and whoever doesn't get picked just gets a message that says, this fix is full. So no harm, no foul. You don't have to dash anybody's hopes or hurt anybody's feelings. And then I launched Fixer Sisters, my great idea website, just as COVID came. And I thought, well, I'm not going to have anybody in my house, and I don't think anybody else wants to. So right now, we are just getting to the point, barring Delta, that we are starting to build this community. I'm really excited about it. And one of the things that we offer are encouragement, hands-on help, and expertise. And the part we're doing tonight is that expertise part. I have a partnership with the NC State Extension Master Gardeners program, and they come to our Saturday morning programs. Generally, it's Monica, or now they are also coming to an evening program and share their expertise. And it has been just a fantastic partnership for me. and I've learned so much, and the women who come on the calls have learned so much. So, without any more talking about me, I am going to introduce you to Monica Mense. You will see her in a moment. Once I stop talking, I will spotlight her. Monica Mense has been a certified master gardener for over 2 years. She's a lifelong gardener. She worked for a large agricultural company in crop science for 8 years. And she says that gardening is a very rewarding pastime because it is being connected, even if only in a small way, to Mother Earth. And I know that's what I love about gardening. Um, and I also love the beauty of it. I love gardening as a way to beautify my exterior. So Monica is going to talk to us tonight about which fall vegetables you can plant in a container, which is fantastic for me because I just built this cute little greenhouse on a whim. And so I'm going to let you take over, Monica, and I'm going to spotlight you.
Thank you very much, Gina. And I think that we're all right during this presentation to ask questions as we go along. So feel free to interrupt me wherever you need to. I hope everyone can hear me all right. So the group that I belong to is the Durham County Master Gardeners from the Durham County Extension Agency office. In the middle 1800s, Abraham Lincoln signed into law the Morrill Land Grant Act that gave universities and many more like universities around the nation land. They traded land to these universities in exchange for research information for the farmers. So that's what a land grant university is. And then Woodrow Wilson in 1914 signed the Smith-Lever Act into federal law to establish the Cooperative Extension Service to educate those farmers. Today, not only do the farmers get information from the universities, we also, residential gardeners, landscapers, get the same information through the Extension Agency. So I'm really happy to be here tonight, happy to be representing that group. And without any further, and assuming that the dog will leave me alone with the thunder, I will launch into what we're talking about this evening, which is container gardening for vegetables. Why would we want to use containers for vegetables? It's only one of many ways that we can grow vegetables, but if all you have for a sunny spot is your driveway and you can fit a few pots on there and still get your car in the carport or in the garage or whatever, you can grow vegetables in those pots. If you only have a patio that gets a little bit of sun, maybe 3-4 hours a day, you can still grow some vegetables there. If you have a balcony and you think that all those summer plants in those pots need to go away now, you can plant some vegetables in there. What you do need is some sun, but let's talk about the containers first. So you can use anything that you might even already happen to have as a container. One of the most important things is that it either has holes so that water can drain through, or you drill holes in it if you need to, and that which works great. A good container holds enough soil for your plants during their growing season. Most of these vegetables don't need but more than maybe 6 or 8 inches of soil. Even carrots, which are not the easiest things in the world to grow, can grow in containers. Let's see, what else? A good container doesn't have to be expensive. I just want to show you a couple examples of containers, if I can. And so part of the reason why I went out and bought some containers, I happen to have raised beds. When I was putting this presentation together, I normally have slides for you to look at. Only I discovered that there aren't very many pictures out there that are very good or that are free that I'm able to use because of copyright law. So I said, well, this isn't working for me. So I'm going to raise vegetables on my deck this year just for the photographs. and we will also enjoy eating them. But so I went to Lowe's and I found this container. This container costs somewhere between $5 and $6. And I really like this container because it's not super deep. It's not going to be very wasteful when you start filling it up with all of your soil. And I say soil, but what I really mean is potting mix. So hold on, we'll get to talk about that in a second. But this is an awesome container to sit wherever you need it to sit. You know, up on the deck, it's going to be a little bit harder for critters to get to it. And as I say, it's deep enough for the vegetables that we're going to talk about and not so deep that you're wasting a lot of soil. If you only have deep containers, you can fill the bottom of them with something other than the potting mix. You can put styrofoam peanuts in there. You could put, well, rocks, assuming you don't have to move the thing in there. You can use any one of a number of fillers in the bottom to take up, so you don't have to use a lot more soil that you don't need. It's okay to put soil down there. It's just if you're trying to grow several containers, you don't want to have to buy a ton of soil. Because this has some holes in it, I am going to put a piece of fabric over the holes just to hold my soil in there. So that's one container. And here's another one. And this container actually could easily fit several plants. The soil that you're using, or the potting mix that you're using, you generally can find at the big box stores like Lowe's and Home Depot, some soil that is fairly nutritious. You'll see them when they say, you know, that they'll feed over the course of a couple of months, 3 months, whatever. And during the wintertime, you're not going to feed anything anyway. But when you have nutritious soil, that's going to make a difference in how many plants you put in here. So I might plant, like 15 lettuce seeds in here, but I will then cull 5 or 8 of them, just, depending upon how big the lettuce gets, which you will learn from the back of your seed envelopes if you want to do seeds, or you just look at your container when you go out to the garden centers and maybe even the big box stores to buy the transplants. You can do either way. So this one would hold a fair amount of plants. This one is going to hold more plants. You could probably get 15 lettuce plants in here, if not 18, and not have to worry about all of them being able to live in there. You have nutritious soil. You can force your plants to be a little closer when they're in a container. You have to watch the containers for watering if you have a lot of roots in there, but we'll talk about that in a second. So that's just a couple ideas. I don't know about you all, but I know that we have some Rubbermaid / Tupperware containers around here that are pretty big. And if I thought I needed those, I would drill holes in them and I would use those in a heartbeat. You don't have to fill them up with soil all the way. You can always only do it 3/4 of the way and still be okay. We'll talk about putting soil in that in a minute. So you don't want to use terracotta, especially during the wintertime, because as you water these plants, the expansion of the water freezing and thawing is going to go ahead and break clay. So don't go for clay. There are pretty containers. Let's just say you wanted a pretty pot on your front porch. You can grow vegetables on your front porch that would be very attractive. And you can put those in some decorative containers that are frost resistant, that are made of plastics that look, and the plastics aren't the frost resistant ones. The ceramic ones are the ones that say frost resistant. They're fairly thick walled. Usually they can handle the freezing and the thawing. But there are some that look like concrete or rock, but they're very, very light. So you can do that if you want to use those. Dark color containers are going to absorb more of the sunlight, so the roots will be a little warmer. It's not that you won't be able to grow white in white containers. We live in North Carolina. We generally have good sun during the wintertime, so you don't have to worry about that. So like the light polyurethane that look like rock or are decorative are fine. Wood protects the roots. Just make sure that the wood is not chemically treated, because that will leach to your roots. And what you plant in and what you put in there is what's absorbed into your plant. And then, of course, that's what you're going to eat. And so that's important that you choose carefully if you're going to use wood, to make sure that it's not treated. Metal containers can get really, really hot and really, really cold. And if you have roots touching that, it might burn the plants. So you might not want to put put it in metal pots. As I said, a piece of fabric. If the holes are really, really small in the bottom of yours because you've drilled them, then you don't have to worry about a piece of fabric. Your your potting mix is going to be fine in there. It's not all going to come out. So don't worry about that. So now you have a basic idea of the container that you can use, or containers that you can use. So now the growing media that goes into the container. When you go to places where you buy potting mix by the bag, this is your big box stores like Home Depot and Lowe's, that kind of thing, you will find a lot of soil choices. If it's going to be something that you are going to eat, you might, if you could, splurge on organic soil. You can mix soils of your potting mixes with black cow composting, that kind of thing, to help the organic material. It'll help hold a little bit of moisture, but it won't be so heavy as filling the entire pot with topsoil. That's going to make it very, very heavy, and it's going to be a little more compact, and that's not what you want in a container. Stick to potting mix, but you can add some compost like black cow, that kind of thing, in there to make it a little richer and to hold a little more moisture. Don't go into your yard and get out any soil in your yard. If there are pathogens in that soil, sometimes all they need is a nice container to go crazy. And that's not what you want either. Your vegetables won't do as well. So these are called potting mixes that you put in here. And if I keep saying soil, I'm going to start smacking myself. You do definitely want to use potting mixes. Remember not to fill it too high up. Leave yourself room to water so that you can allow a lot of water to enter the container, soak in, then come back and do it again and soak in. The roots are, if you buy transplants, go ahead and make sure when you put the transplant in your pot with the soil in it that you untangle the roots. Sometimes the plants that come into some places are a little leggy. That means the plant's really pretty tall and kind of old, which is fine, but you need to make sure when you take it out of its container that the roots, you just comb the roots out a little bit. It's okay if you displace some of the soil falls into your container, it's fine. And then plant the plant in your container. Don't let the roots do nothing but run around themselves. That won't turn out very well either. And we want good vegetables. So you probably know already that a hardiness zone is a geographic location defined to encompass a certain range of climatic conditions. So we are in 7B. This is the Piedmont. So there's a lot that we can do here. Fall is a pretty long season. And so it's great to be discussing this now, because you can be planting for the next 4 weeks and still be fabulous. Your seeds will germinate, and you can keep these plants all winter long. And I'll tell you how we're going to do that in just a second. But the other thing that you need to look at, not only are we going to look at plants, but the other thing that you need to decide is sun. So there are some lettuces, especially, that take less sun. You can get away with 3 to 4 hours of sun and still grow some beautiful lettuces. Lettuce seed is one of the few really persnickety seeds that I can think of They don't want to be planted before your nights get below 75 degrees. So we can wait until truly the weather, what I call breaks, mid-September, somewhere in there, to put the lettuce seeds into the pots. They are actually they take very little time to germinate and to grow. Arugula can be ready to harvest in as little as 4 weeks. So if you've got 4 hours of sun in a spot, you can have a container garden with some vegetables in it. I say lettuces, and a lot of what I talk about are greens, because some of the most nutritious things for your body are greens. And we'll cover several greens when we look at what we can plant. If you get 6 hours of sun a day in your spot, you can, and then these pots are movable, you can put almost anything you want in there. It may take them a longer to grow, but they'll still be there for you when you want to harvest. It's awesome to have that much sun. You'll be great. All right. Carrots and parsnips and beets require more sun, and carrots are something that you can't transplant. You can only seed plant, and they are what I would call a more challenging crop. Beets are not as bad, but beets aren't something that you will harvest over the course of the winter. You can go out and get some greens from beets, and as long as you leave 1 or 2 greens, the beet will still grow, but you will not harvest that beet until well into springtime. And what we want to focus on here is vegetables that you can have all winter long. You can go out, depending upon how many of these you have, or the window boxes, and actually, I think this is supposed to be, it's going on your deck railing or something like that. I have no intention of putting it on the railing, but something like that, you'd be able to harvest a couple times a week from that with regards to lettuces and stuff. And that's another reason to choose the best soil that you can. The more nutritious the soil, the more nutritious the plants are for you. It's just like if you eat meat, whatever the animal eats, you actually eat. So you want to try to choose as healthy, as animals as you possibly can, not something that's only been fed antibiotics so that they get bigger. All right, so let's talk about what we can grow. And I want also, well, we'll share resources in a minute. Let's do this first. Collards. I love collards, and they are so easy to grow. They are supposed to be spaced about 8 to 12 inches apart. I would not hesitate, and this pot is I don't know how many inches that thing is. I want to say that I would put 3. Yeah, it's 12.5 inches. I would easily put 3 collards in here, and that's going to fit just fine, because you are going to be able to go out and get a few collard leaves from each plant and allow the plant to then regenerate more leaves from the center. This is a cut and come again vegetable, as are many of the ones that we're going to talk about. Kale is easily a cut and come again vegetable. This, as you can tell, is from one of my very favorite seed, where I like to buy my seeds, So True Seeds, a woman-owned seed place in Asheville. If you ever go over, they have a storefront, and they're just wonderful. But kale is something that you can do. And the way that I suggest to do kale, you can easily do 5 or 6 plants in this size container. You can say, I'd say, okay, I'm going to plant this half of the container this week, and then a week or 2 later, I'm going to do the other half. So you can harvest leaves first from the ones on the one side, the more matures. And then as you're really getting down to where they've been pretty well harvested and you've got to let them grow some more, you can start on the other half. It's called succession planting. It's not something everybody would ordinarily do in a container, especially with cut and come again, but we want these to last as long as possible. So you can always do that with kale. I harvest all winter long, but I'm working in like 96 square feet. I'm going to be interested. This is the experiment to see how long I can harvest when I plant in containers. I want photographs, but I'm also going to eat it. Swish
Monica,
on.
can I
Yes,
ask you
ma'am.
a quick question? So you are talking about kale and collards, but you're showing us seeds. In other words, these are vegetables that we should grow from seed, or would you say we would transplant, or these just grow so fast, don't bother with transplants?
No, you can do it either way. So like I said, the garden centers, and I'm just not sure about the big boxes because I grow all of my vegetables from seed. I'm trying to think of one that I might not, or have not. Most everything comes from seed. You can go to any of the garden centers. They'll have these seeds right now. And you can plant them. But the garden centers are also going to have some transplants. If you feel more confident with this experiment first time around, by all means, don't do seeds, do transplants. You're then at the mercy of what they have for transplants. You might find a little bit better variety in seed packets, but it's okay to do either one. How about you buy 3 kale transplants and then you buy some seeds, and after the transplants have been in the pot for a while, space them out, then put some seeds down. This is an experiment and it's a fun one. Does that answer your question, Gina?
It does. Thank you very much. And everybody who's listening, if you have a question for Monica, just drop it in the chat, and I will just break in and interrupt her because she has great answers. Do you see that someone says that they grow romaine from the stems they break off after making a salad?
I do.
So smart.
And you can put that in a container of water, and not, as long as you keep the whole plant, like with toothpicks, keep it off. You can grow that in a glass full of water. There's a few other things you can do like that, but you'll have a much hardier response if they're in soil. But that is exactly what she's talking about is a great example of a cut and come again vegetable. Now this is going to be my first year growing this. I love Brussels sprouts. They're just baby cabbages, and if you roast them, it mellows them out, and it makes them absolutely amazing. And here's what I should be able to do based on what I know about Brussels sprouts. I should be able to go out, harvest enough heads for that dinner, and then the rest of the plant keeps growing, and there's heads growing up all along the way. The ones at the bottom are bigger, and the plant grows from the top. So I think that's going to work really well. This is a tall plant and fairly heavy. You will want the deeper version of this pot if you really want to try Brussels sprouts. And I have never seen a Brussels sprout plant, but I'm not good at always looking at what vegetables they grow at garden centers because I grow them from seed. So there is a deeper version of this. This year I grew a baby tomato in the deeper version of this, and it's happy as it looks like a tomato. It's got wilty leaves. There's some spots. I don't treat it. I don't do anything. It's turning out tomatoes like crazy. I'm good. The heat is slowing the tomatoes down. That's normal. They'll put on another flush before the season is out. But I'm just thrilled to be able to. I don't use my beds for the tomatoes because I can't eat them. I grow them for my husband, but they're always in containers. Okay, here's another one, which I have grown more than one variety of choy. This is pak choy, and this is another one. You break off the outer leaves, you cut them actually a little bit above the soil level, and they will continue to grow from the center of the plant so that you can harvest again. All right, so cabbage is another one of these. Is pretty. Look at this one. Cabbage is a plant that I'm really not terribly interested in trying to do in a container because they're too big. I have grown cabbages that are the pointy end, the top ones. You can get 2 or 3 of those in here. And I really do believe that this would be deep enough to to grow cabbages in, but you're probably not going to get more than 4. Now, for the very big head, firm ones, of which Red Acre is a little bit bigger, but it's not like some of those monsters you see at the grocery store, and you cut it in half and you think, I'm going to cook this up tonight. You cut it in half and you chop the first half and you go, oh no, there's too much cabbage here. I'm good. I have to put the rest of this in the refrigerator. These are a little bit smaller, so you could get away with it. But cabbages are not what I'm going to. Buena Savoy, I might, but I don't know. I might have to have an experiment. Now here's something else I haven't grown, and I'm actually pretty excited about this because I try to look at the nutrition of these items, and any kind of broccoli is, a cruciferous. I can't eat them raw. Number one, they bother my stomach, but they're also not good for my thyroid, and I already have hypothyroidism. But cooked, cruciferous vegetables, broccoli is one of those, cabbage is one of those. Cruciferouses are wonderful for you. Tons and tons of nutrition in here. And I'm very excited to try broccoli rabe. Broccoli rabe is going to be, I'll cut the center head, but there are side shoots, heads, that we can then go back out and get at a later time. And I'm excited about that. Of course, all of these vegetables that I'm talking about are cool weather vegetables. So you start them now. An author that I'm going to show you a book in a second says that we're stocking the outdoor refrigerator. So you start these plants, and a lot of these will go ahead and start growing right now. You can plant these, and except for the lettuces, you can plant these, they'll germinate, they're going to start growing. And that's why then when it gets colder, the plants definitely go a little more dormant. There's not as the growing doesn't happen as quickly, and so the cut and come won't be right on top of won't be like this, but they'll still grow. Our days are still warm enough, and so you get your outdoor refrigerator filled. I love that idea. So here are the lettuces that I'm going to. Oh, this is a cool packet. Here are the lettuces that I'm going to try this year, and someone else in the Fixer Sisters group that I know of planted this black-seeded Simpson and said that she had a great success with it. And so I'm going to be interested to see how this goes. But isn't that packet beautiful? I think it's really cool that they add some artwork to their packets. I'm also going to grow. Okay, so this was probably something I ordered. See how this says that this is a 4-season lettuce? I will not plant all of that this fall. I will save some of it for spring. And what I believe this is saying is that it is heat tolerant. I was with a master gardener group the other day, and someone showed me their lettuces. It's August. And I was like, what? There are varieties that will grow even during the summertime. When you harvest your lettuces and you eat them in a salad, you'll be amazed at how good they are. They're just sweeter to me. And because I just cut it, I am getting 95% of the nutrition that this vegetable has to offer. That's fun. Speckled Amish butterhead. Butterhead, we know what kind it is, but the speckled Amish I haven't tried. And then this is one of my tried and true, and I absolutely love it. Lola Rosa red, dark. It's a red lettuce because the darker the vegetables, sometimes the more phytonutrients they have, which is also good for us. So I want to do that. One of the other things that you can do in a container outside is this is a packet of very tiny seeds, and they're sprouting seeds. And you can go online and you can find these things. Arugula is a great one to do it with. Oh, yeah. And you can even you grow these things till they're about this big, and then you cut them and you eat them. These are baby greens, amazingly nutritious. And then some of them will grow back. Or you can you can get rid of all of those. You can even leave them, and you can sow more seeds. And when they come up, you can harvest those. This is a great way to do container, and you can do it with the plants that grow during this time of year, like all the vegetables that I mentioned. I'm holding off on the lettuce, but they're this time of the year. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying the fall. So you can also do microgreens in these containers. Now, if you do microgreens, you don't need this bad boy. You can use anything shallow. They take almost no depth whatsoever. So you know how you buy flats of plants, and you can buy little containers that go in them. You've seen these, I know you have. They, Walmart, big box stores of all sorts. You can plant your greens in there, your microgreens, and just harvest that way. Just another little idea to experiment with.
Monica, are those indoor or outdoor?
Outdoor. Outdoor. You can do microgreens indoor all day long. You just have to have enough light. And it's okay to do it at an eastern or southern window, but you have to keep turning them because they're going to continue to grow. Even if they're only this big, they're going to grow toward the light. So just turn them every day and you'll be fine. Indoor, outdoor, it doesn't matter. I've done both. So have at it, however is easiest for you. When you put your seeds in your soil that is not all the way to the top, the water, and you need to water the soil mix before you put the seeds in. Go ahead and water that, let it sink, add some more, make sure it's good and wet, and then plant your seeds in that moist soil. You can just drizzle some more potting mix on top of that. And then you might have to have a spray bottle to mist. You need to keep the seeds wet until they germinate. And then you only have to keep them, like during the really warm weather, you're going to want to water them every day. I doubt you'll have to do twice a day unless we stay at this 95 degrees. But then during the wintertime, you don't have to keep them as wet at all. You don't have to water them as much. They, again, get quiet, a little dormant. The lettuces continue to grow. Everything continues to grow, just not super fast.
Monica, I just want to make sure I heard you right. You said that if you are growing these vegetables outdoors in this weather, you may have to water them twice a day.
A lot depends upon your soil, your soilless potting soil mix. If you mix it with something a little heavier, like the compost or like topsoil even, you shouldn't have to, but a lot depends upon the sun that you have. When they're seeds, they have to stay moist while they're in the process of germinating. And you'll see them start to come up. They have to stay moist. They're working at putting roots into the soil so that even if it's 95 degrees up here, they have something they can tap if they get really hot. So if you're in 8 hours of sun, it's 95 degrees. If you get down to the second knuckle of your finger and it's dry, go ahead and water them. When they're super tiny, if it gets down to 1, you'll look at the surface and you'll know they're too dry. Spray them down. But you want to do it with a really soft stream of water, because otherwise you're going to displace everything that you've done. And you've placed these seeds, you could put more seeds than you need in here and then thin them out. And the way to thin them out is just to cut them off. Don't pull them, because you could hurt the roots of the ones that you do want to keep. Cut them off, and while you're cutting, grab them and eat them.
Okay, so the question was, there was a question posed, you recommend, the question is, do they have to be grown in potting soil versus water? I know some of them, you said you could start in water and the romaine actually could remain in water, but not, you said it wouldn't be as vigorous. And which ones are you better off planting outdoors versus indoors?
So as far as all of these vegetables are concerned, everything that I talked about, they're all better outdoors, because you're letting these grow to maturity. They're not going to want to do that inside. You won't give them enough sun. Even if it's a southern window, you'll struggle. These guys want to be outside. Remember, we don't have much humidity in our homes. And at the beginning, these guys all have that humidity going for them. That's their natural habitat, is outside. When you're doing baby seeds, or you want to do microgreens, all we're asking them to do is germinate and put on a couple 3 inches at the most, and then we're cutting them off. You can get away with that inside in a heartbeat. When you have spring vegetables, when we plant spring vegetables, we start those things inside in a protected area under enough light so that by the time the frost period has passed, which is April 15 in our area, you can take the transplants, you can harden them off. This is taking them in and out for a few days so that they get used to being outside in the full sun. You harden them off and then you plant them, those kinds of things. But you have to have enough light to do it. So only the microgreens do you want to try inside, and they can stay inside. Inside, outside, it doesn't matter. Birds may decide they need to eat your microgreens. Squirrels may decide, but we'll talk about pests in a minute. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, don't let me not answer something fully here. All of this, the Swiss chard, the broccoli, the Brussels sprouts, pak choy, cabbages, collards, all of this stuff wants to be outside. You can start them outside in transplanting things if you want to now, and then put them in the garden in a month. But you can also direct sow. If you bring, and the garden centers will make available to you the proper vegetables at the proper time. They may put them out a couple weeks early, but you'll still, most of what I don't think they're going to sell lettuces. I think lettuces are all more happy coming from seed. Like I don't ever remember seeing lettuces offered, but I could be wrong. You might find lettuces started. And then you could just take them, since they've already germinated, you can take those and put them in the garden right now. If you found lettuce plants already planted, you can take those transplants and put them in the garden now. If you want lettuce, you have to wait till it gets cooler to germinate it, because these guys don't want to germinate if it's not a cooler period. Does that clarify anything?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So on your seed packets, you're going to notice some information. See at the bottom there? This tells you your seed spacing. Now you're not going to have to worry about that as much, because you're not growing them in the ground with soil that you've either amended, or you're just doing it with whatever you have. You're putting really good soil in here. So you can put them closer than what your packet says. But your packet also says days to harvest. So that's an important piece of information for you to know. Pretty much you're going to know by looking, but you're going to count on it happening about 50 days from when you planted it. So you want to know. Don't expect to do it in 4 weeks. You might be able to do it. How many days is 6 weeks? Nope, 7 weeks. Okay. So even though it says that your mature spacing is 6 to 10 inches, because you've got super nutritious soil in here, you can put your stuff a little closer. It's right there for you to water. That's another good reason to use a pot. What if you can't dig it, if you can't plant it in the ground, but you're only physically able to put it in pots? That's easier to do. Not as far to bend over, not getting on your knees, working the ground. This may be the way to go.
Monica, someone asked if you can show the back of the seed packet again and just point out that information you were talking about.
Sure. I'm going to show you the kale. Sometimes the information is on the front of the packet. Sometimes, it's okay. Can you see that, Gina?
You can. It's in and out, but they'll know what to look for.
So do you see this little sidebar right here?
Yes.
That information is seed spacing, 1 to 2 inches, seed depth, 1/4 of an inch. This is what I'm talking about, just drizsling's not the right term, just sprinkling a little potting soil on top of your seeds, because who the heck really knows how deep 1/4 of an inch is going to be to try to plant a seed. Days to sprout, 5 to 17 days. I've never seen these take as long as they say. You're going to be closer to the 5 days, but if you don't see it in 5 days, you'll see it in 10. And then the mature spacing is 12 inches. So if you put your seeds 1 to 2 inches apart, you know you're going to have to thin one of them out because they're not going to grow that close together. You can get them a lot closer than 12 inches because you've got a great nutritious thing here that you're going to be able to water. It's not like on a farm where they've got to be spaced out a little bit for growth. And because sometimes there's not, the watering is an issue and you needed the plants to not be crowding each other. It also tells me I have 635 seeds in here. It's going to be a lot of kale. I can't plant everything that I don't have. There's too many seeds, but that's okay, because in the spring, like February 14th is actually a good date here, you can put out more seed in your containers, and you can have then with, by the end of May, you've got more crops you can eat. And not even like if you grew some arugula, that would be ready in a month, and you could have arugula in March and April and May. By the time it gets hot, vegetables tend to bolt. And what that means is they put on a lot of upward growth, and they're going to go to flower, and you're not, nothing's going to taste quite as good, because that's really where the plant puts its energy, and it tends to go bitter. All right, I want to talk about pests. There aren't nearly as many pests in the fall as there are in the spring. I am a big chicken, and I use a very thin fabric that lets both the rain and the sun through. It's called row cover. You will find this probably not at the big box stores, but at the garden centers. And even when I grow in pots, the crops that I'm going to start in the next week or two, I am going to cut up, because they sell this thing in sheets that are like 15 feet long. You can order it online for cheaper, but I just buy it at the garden center because I'm never on my game well enough to order it. But you can cut that up, and I would just use some type of stake or stick to make sort of a teepee tent over my seedlings, and just close that over, use a piece of twine around my pot so that rain will get through, sun will get through, but no creatures will. If you decide to let your vegetables be out and not covered with row cover, you can use some products to help fight what creatures there are left. Something called BT. If you take this term to a garden store, they're going to be able to tell you what it is. I can't believe that they don't sell it in a big box store, but I've never noticed. I noticed that Walmart had 30% vinegar the other day for killing weeds, which I was like, wow, who knew? Walmart. But this is called, it's a bacterium called Bacillus thuringiensis. It is a powder that is very safe to use, very safe for you and I. I mean, we're going to rinse it off anyway, but anything that's chewing on your vegetables, it's going to go ahead and kill them. Another bacterium is, well, that's not bacterium, but there's another powder called diatomaceous earth. And diatomaceous earth is made from, I'm not sure, it's not fairly ancient, but little tiny crustaceans, shells from ages ago. They turn it into a powder, and the creature eats it, and it tears up their insides, and they die. Which is, when you're only growing limited amount of crops in your containers, you can't afford for anybody to come take any. Farmers will sacrifice the whole outside rows to creatures, but I can't afford to do that even in my raised beds. And then the other thing is, if it's not a worm that's eating that will be taken care of by BT or diatomaceous earth, insecticidal soap. I read the labels on everything that you use. follow the directions, and be mindful of our pollinators that we need so badly to protect. I think BT and DE would be okay because you're not going to put them in flowers. You're not going to put those substances in flowers. Insecticidal soap, I honestly am getting confused with some other substances that you spray. If you have a flying insect, you'll want to spray on insecticidal soap like aphids, whitefly, certain moths. You will have seen the larvae first. You know, when you hand water, it's really a cool thing because then you get to see the bug, you get to identify the bug, and you get to treat it with the proper substance. So one of the, oh, there's an ant. Where would that have come from up here? Okay. I bet you I brought it home from Lowe's. All right. So here is one of the most awesome books that I can recommend. Ira Wallace wrote this book. She's done what I think is an amazing job. It fits our area so well. What do you plant? When do you plant it? And just some really great information about all of the vegetables that I mentioned. She does it by month, which is also helpful in case I forget. If I look in here, I'm like, oh yeah, I got to go do that. That's an excellent resource. Also, Gina might have put in this book that this is the handbook that this is the handbook I had to purchase for my class. This is online, available for free to you. And all you have to do probably is put in the North Carolina Extension Gardening Handbook, and you'll come up with the site where it is. Lots of fabulous information in here. The only other resource that I wanted you to have, well, you got my seed resources. Here is another one that I think is fantastic. And this is Ira Wallace is affiliated with the Southern Exposure Seed Exchange, another great place to order seeds. The broccoli rabe that I had, it was sold out everywhere online. I have no idea why there's a run on broccoli or broccoli rabe, but I found this at a garden center. So if you want to grow that, go for that. You might find it there. All right, 7:23. Tell me, can I answer any questions for anybody?
I'm going to unmute myself, and if anyone else wants to unmute and just jump in with a question, this is the time. TE had to go. Her family arrived, so she had to cut out, but she wanted to say thank you so much, Monica. This has been fantastic.
I see Connie's question. Connie, I think you might have heard me say that one of these seed packets had 635 seeds in it. If you're planting Swiss chard, you can do it a seed you can easily do it a seed at a time because the seeds are pretty big. I drive myself crazy with the lettuce because it's super tiny. So I try not to be sweating, and I put them in the palm of my hand, and then I can just grab some and I sprinkle. There might be instruments that help you drop the seed exactly. I don't worry so much about it because they give you so much seed. You can plant it like that and then thin as you need to. I take my area and cut it into foot-long or square sections. You can easily do that in a container. Just sprinkle the seeds over and then cut off what you don't want. And thereby hopefully controlling it so you don't put all 580 seeds in the container. It might not work.
Can I ask another question?
No, Connie.
So when you see, for instance, that it takes 40 days to grow, or it takes 5 to 17 days to grow, that will be every seed that you planted, or they'll start, and how long does that continue? Like if you, after that 17-day period and you've harvested whatever the vegetable is, do you put more down and then more pop up 17 days later? Or is there a window of you can only plant them from this time to this time and get a harvest?
So I think I'm swiping seeds off of the carpeting. So good question. The shorter period of time is your germination time, and I probably didn't make that clear. So you put in, because there's two ways to do this. You can do it all at once, and I don't mean all 580 seeds. You can plant the whole container. All of it will germinate between 5 and 17 days from now, or however, 3 to 15 days from now, or whatever it says on the packet. Then it's 50 days to harvest. This cabbage, 76 days to harvest. And that's all at once. Remember, cabbage is something that I said probably wouldn't be good in a container because you can't put too many cabbages in a container. And cabbage, you can't, it is not a cut and come again vegetable. The lettuces, the collards, the kale, the Swiss chard, the cut and come again, you plant them, they all germinate, and then they spend time growing, and you don't get to harvest any of that for 50 days. You can take leaves from all of these cut and come again vegetables, like the pak choi, the lettuces, the Swiss chard, and the collards. You could just take outside leaves and the whole plant will keep growing. If you want to extend your growing season, you plant half of them now and half of them in 2 weeks. You have different growth sizes going on, so that when you finally cut that last leaf off of one of them, you still have the other ones that are coming on. Does that make sense, Connie?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Thank you.
Now, if I may ask a question, Jasmine, is there a Jasmine? What has been working on ants?
Oh, she was recommending to me that I believe it was the diatomaceous earth as something that the ants can't walk through, or that they
they consume it. They accidentally consume it, and it
they eat it and it makes their insides explode. I couldn't remember the name of it, but that's, yes, and I couldn't remember how to spell it either, so I was struggling to figure out how to get the information, but yeah, that was what I was talking about.
Thank you for that. That's the diatomaceous earth actually does mess with their midsection. So Gina, do you remember, I want to say there was another fixer sister who does the community garden, because I know you went to help her, and she uses ground up rice, and she says that makes the inside of the ants, they drink water and then they explode. I don't know that any of these things cause explosions, but it definitely messes with their midsections and they die.
Which seems cruel, but as you said, when you put in all the effort to grow just what's going to amount to a bowl of food for yourself, you just kind of feel like, could you just not eat my one little dinner thing? Yeah. So one quick question.
Yes.
At what point, if you do have pests on your vegetables, if you do get pests, does that make it inedible to you?
So certainly you don't grow vegetables without seeing some damage. Whether or not you treat those pests is up to you by how much damage you feel you can withstand. During the fall, there's not going to be anything that's going to eat your whole leaf or that's going to put big holes in it. I mean, we shouldn't be hatching a whole lot out of potting soil. It's not like you're growing it in the ground. So there's no limit. If they leave you a half a leaf, you could eat that half a leaf as long as you're washing it off first. You don't want to consume. So when I bring vegetables home from the farmer's garden, the first thing when I do before I eat them, I submerge them into a bowl of water, and I wait, and I just mix it around with my fingers, and then I pull up just to see what's in the water. Often there's aphids. I don't want to eat any aphids. So I empty that bowl and I fill it again, and I use a salad spinner, which is just super easy. And because then when the interior, which is the perforated portion of the salad spinner. When you pull that up, it leaves all the water and you see what kind of pests. I buy organic vegetables, so they haven't, which doesn't mean that they're not treated with anything. It means that they're not sprayed with stuff that I don't want in my body. They are treated with diatomaceous earth and Bacillus thuringiensis and that kind of stuff. So that's okay because I'm going to rinse all that off. And indeed, the farmer for the most part has already rinsed it off, or they haven't applied it in so long that it's okay. The pests got gone when they treated it, and there's not enough. It's rained a couple times. There's not enough left on it to truly worry about. But it's your own threshold. When I work really hard to grow my own vegetables, I don't mind. I know where they've been. I know what's on them. I know as long as that creature's not there now, you can eat it.
That's great information. And we're at 7:30, so I'm going to let you go. I just have one more question.
Sure.
When you grow vegetables in the ground, you can grow a cover crop to get more nutrients back in the soil. I have only grown tomatoes in a pot. And the first year I grew my tomatoes, I bought fresh potting soil and it was great. And I had fabulous tomatoes. And the next year I put the transplants back in that same dirt and I had leaves. So what do you do with dirt that you've grown vegetables in and they've come, and you've harvested them. And now that dirt no longer has enough nutrition, in my experience, to support more vegetables? Do you dump it in your garden because it's fine, or can you treat it?
I have plenty. I mean, like I'm only on a third of an acre, so it's not like I have a huge yard by any stretch. There's always some place that I could put, that soil or that potting mix. When you grow vegetables in the ground, you can grow a cover crop to return the nitrogen that fixes the nitrogen actually from the air and delivers it into the soil. But with this stuff, you really have to start new, especially tomatoes, because there's so many pathogens that attack tomatoes that come up so after one season, not only a lack of nutrition, but also because there may be pests in there. So you can put that anywhere. You can throw that out on your lawn and water it in. You can throw that out in the backyard under the tree. You can, whatever you want to do with it, it's not going to hurt anything.
What you can't do is use it again.
You really don't want to. Tomatoes are heavy feeders, as are some vegetables like cabbages. I don't remember if collards are or not, but cabbages, you have to give them a little extra side dressing of food midway through the season. And that's just what tells you what kind of heavy feeders tomatoes are and why you will want to start with new soil the next season. But the tomatoes will grow. I mean, this one only taller. It's more root room. It's really not a whole lot more volume. So they really grow without using a tremendous amount of potting mix.
That is really helpful. Thank you so much, Monica. This is Monica Mense. She's a master gardener, and she is with us on Saturday mornings, sometimes from 11 to 1. The second Saturday of the month, she's not going to be able to be with us this coming second Saturday, the 14th. So she graciously offered to be here this evening and talk to us about growing vegetables in a pot and in containers. So helpful. Again, I'm Gina Rozier with Fixer Sisters. That's FixerSisters.com. And I'm so glad for all of you who have joined us tonight and all of you who will be watching on YouTube who couldn't make it here tonight for this great information. Have a great evening. Have a great weekend. And I'll see you soon.